Nah, you still get the Nobel Peace Prize. We'll have a summit with South Korea. What's the difference? One Korea, the other Korea. Ready? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee for joining me here this morning. Our nation's democratic norms mean little to President Trump. He's attacked the independence and integrity of the Department of Justice since before taking office. He has shown contempt for due process and little regard for the rule of law. He is obsessed with the special counsel's investigation to the point of distraction. But this week, President Trump crossed the new line. In a tweet, he, quote, demanded, unquote, that the Department of Justice investigate whether the FBI infiltrated or surveilled his campaign. This is not normal. This is not acceptable. And it is important for the American people to understand why. The President of the United States must not make decisions about individual law enforcement investigations. That job belongs to the Department of Justice, which may only open a criminal investigation if the investigation is properly predicated on evidence of a crime. President Trump is engaging in a propaganda campaign of disinformation, branding it Spygate to generate headlines and stir public emotions in order to fundamentally undermine our democratic institutions. He is deliberately turning the rule of law upside down to suit his own interests, which can only erode the public trust in our justice system. Moreover, the President may not interfere in a criminal investigation of which he is a subject. It should surprise no one that President Trump has made his latest demand to serve his own interests. He has no evidence whatsoever that an informant infiltrated Trump Tower or his campaign for any purpose, let alone an improper purpose. But he is willing to take the unprecedented step of, quote, demanding a criminal investigation in an ill-conceived attempt to protect himself from federal investigators by distracting attention and engaging in continued attacks against the Department of Justice and the FBI. Perhaps worst of all, as he works to advance this latest conspiracy theory, President Trump has helped to expose a confidential source at the center of the controversy. I should say may have helped to expose a confidential source at the center of the controversy. Ladies and gentlemen, a deliberate decision to expose the identity of a confidential source is reckless, stupid, and dangerous. Moreover, the decision to out this operative is probably a crime. Later today, I will ask the Department of Justice to investigate the source of this disclosure, which never should have happened, and to hold the perpetrators accountable. Finally, if you, like me, are tired of the President and his legal team complaining about the reach and length of the special counsel's investigation, I will direct you to a letter that my colleagues and I have just transmitted to the President. In this letter, we advise the President to stop stalling, stop blaming the investigation for his political troubles, stop posturing in the media with his endless parade of legal advisors, and submit to an interview with Special Counsel Mueller. The interview is all but inevitable. Robert Mueller is well within his rights to compel the President's testimony through a subpoena, and it is hard to imagine that the Special Counsel's investigation will be complete without the President's testimony. So if the President wants the investigation to be completed as rapidly as possible, as he keeps saying, he will agree to sit for an interview without forcing the Special Counsel to spend months enforcing a subpoena. Yesterday, the President's new lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, told the Washington Post that he was concerned about the interview because, quote, the truth is relative, unquote. Shame on him. The truth is not relative. The facts are not relative. Special Counsel Mueller is charged with following the facts wherever they lead. When his work is complete, the House Judiciary Committee will be tasked with the same. Our expectation is that the President will agree to an interview, that after concluding his work, the Special Counsel will submit his findings in a report, and that the report will be made public so that the American people can see the facts for themselves. Thank you very much. And Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much. As Secretary Pompeo testified this week there is no deep state. There is no deep state. But yet the President of the United States chooses to perpetrate reckless havoc on the rule of law. He does it for the nation and for the international community. It is important for the President to set a standard of morality and respect for the rule of law and the Constitution. His complete rejection of the special counsel's status and legality has permeated and undermined the Constitution and the rule of law. It is a sad set of circumstances when the President himself caused the establishment of the special counsel, firing Mr. Comey and then admitting that he fired Mr. Comey to stop the Russian investigation. So my point to the President is, stop stalling, stop blaming the investigation for your political troubles, and submit to the interview, as indicated by the letter that we as Democratic members of the Judiciary Committee with the responsibility of oversight have asked him to do. In addition, what a sad state of affairs again for seeking to undermine the process of investigation of the FBI or any other law enforcement organization. I can imagine what Scotland Yard is thinking now. Jeopardizing the use of a confidential human source is a widely used and effective tool, undermines again the Constitution, likely to cast aspersions on the special counsel. I'm reminded of the exposure of a CIA agent in 2003 when her husband opposed the Iraq War. This may create danger not only to the exposed informant, but to others who are involved in the national security of this nation. It is interesting to note that a confidential human resource or source is often used to protect the American people, to solve vicious crimes, and certainly to protect us against terrorism. I wonder what the President is thinking when he is offered to say that he is not going to follow the law. Finally, ZTE. It amazes all of us as members of the Judiciary Committee that a president would get in bed with a foreign entity that has been known and found to have violated our national security by selling intelligence. That is the Chinese company. And the basis of doing so is that he wants to save the jobs of Chinese workers. Mr. President, you have wreaked havoc on the Constitution, on the rule of law, on the order of the presidency, and the decorum of the presidency. It is a responsibility of this Judiciary Committee to perpetrate, to stand for the rule of law, but also to have oversight. And my final comments are this. If you want this nation to regain its footing, to uphold the Constitution, to have the processes of government work, then you need to do as your lawyer has said. He's got to do it. And that is to sit with the special counsel for an interview and be able to be heard in whether you are telling the truth or not.
Thank you. They've just called votes unexpectedly early, so I will take my political life in my hands and urge my colleagues to be brief. Steve Cohen.
Thank you. I want to quote Donald Trump. It would be a disgrace to our country and be one of the biggest insults that anyone has ever seen. And this is on his fantasy Spygate. There's never been anything like this in the history of the country. It'd be the biggest political scandal in U.S. history. What would be the biggest political scandal in U.S. history is what Robert Mueller, I feel confident, will submit to the American people, and that is that a foreign power colluded with a political candidate to win the presidency of the United States of America. He is turning what Robert Mueller will expose as the biggest political scandal in history into something that he has created as a fantasy for the FBI doing their job. This F that I'm wearing on my lapel, John Yarmouth came up with these for our grades on NRA. This is what Donald Trump deserves for his work in preserving democracy and our countries and protecting our Constitution. I'm going to take a little extra time, not much. Today is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It's also the birthday of Robert Zimmerman, and I want to quote Robert Zimmerman today. Come gather around people wherever you roam and admit that the waters around you have grown and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are changing. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen and keep your eyes wide. That chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are changing. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who is stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are changing. And the last line, the line it is drawn, the curse it is cast, the slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are changing. Thank you, Bob Dylan. Happy birthday, Bob.
Hank Johnson.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our government is not a government of, by, and for the dictator. Our government is of, by, and for the people. In America, no person, not even the President of the United States, is above the law. Yet every day we wake up to new and more disturbing reports about President Trump and his accomplices in Congress putting their thumbs on the scale of justice in an attempt to stop the Mueller investigation or set up a pretext that would provide them cover for firing key officials who oversee that investigation. Make no mistake about it, they are waging an all-out war and an assault on the rule of law in America. We are here today because our Republican colleagues are failing to stand up and put country over party and politics. Ladies and gentlemen, the integrity of our democracy is at stake. The way that this president and his associates in Congress are behaving is unprecedented, and the implications and ramifications to our democracy are grave. That is why all members of Congress should be united in protecting the Mueller investigation to its conclusion. The president should stop obfuscating and agree to an interview by the special counsel. Then we can expect a final report that will be transmitted to Congress and made available to the public. That is the American way. Anything other than that is an attack on our democracy and an affront to notions of fair play and justice. Until this Republican Congress starts standing up to protect the guiding principles of our democracy, this crisis will only get worse. And with that, I yield.
Luis Gutierrez.
Thank you. Three things. Giuliani says that the president can't be indicted. I just want to remind Mr. Giuliani, the Congress of the United States still reserves that right in the Constitution. Number one. Number two, to me, I think of fascist regimes during World War II. I think of Pinochet in Chile. I think of regimes around the world where there's only one party, and apparently they believe the same thing. They only need to invite one party to the meeting. Well, this is a democracy, not a fascist one-party rule, although that's the way you want to move forward. And so we demand that you stop this. Now, I know that there's going to be a meeting with everyone in the afternoon, but why give a separate meeting when you know that Mr. Nunes has all but said, I am in the lap of Donald Trump. I will do his bidding. I will do his work. And it's so discredited the Intelligence Committee and his own office. To invite him again, I think, is detestable and deplorable. Lastly, as we move forward, this is not about a homophobic president of the United States. This is not about a racist president of the United States. Those are political matters that we will take up with the American people, and he will be judged on those matters. This is about a president of the United States that is above the law and above the Constitution. And the Committee on the Judiciary is here to say we will defend and protect the Constitution of the United States.
David Cicilline.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. For more than a year, the American people have been asking a simple question. What is Donald Trump hiding? There have been 22 indictments or guilty pleas as a result of the special counsel's investigation. That includes the president's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who, it's important to remember, is awaiting trial for conspiracy against the United States of America. But through all of this, the president has refused to come clean with the American people. He's promoted conspiracy theories. He's tried to undermine Robert Mueller, who is an experienced former federal prosecutor who served as an FBI director under both Presidents George Bush and Barack Obama. And I looked up this morning. Since January 2017, he's tweeted the words witch hunt 50 times. He has done just about everything, it seems, except sit down for an interview with special counsel. If President Trump has nothing to hide, and he's done nothing wrong, then he should sit for an interview with the special counsel and let this investigation come to a close. And that's why we're sending this letter today, because in the United States of America, no one is above the law, including the President of the United States. And once this investigation is completed, the special counsel will produce a report, and the American people will be able to judge the facts for themselves. I'll just close by pointing out that in 2016, the American people elected Donald Trump in large part because of his promise to drain the swamp. But we've already seen many signs that he's actually made corruption worse. Michael Cohen charging the Ukrainian government $400,000 for a meeting with the president. The Beijing boondoggle, where the president advocated for saving a Chinese company and Chinese jobs just days after Beijing provided one of his properties with a $500 million loan. Cabinet secretaries taking personal vacations on the taxpayers' dime, and the list goes on and on. The American people deserve answers about the full extent of the corruption in this administration and Trump's inner circle. And for the first time, the first step really is for the president to sit down with the special counsel and answer his questions. Our country and the American people deserve no less.
Thank you. Eric Swalwell.
Thank you, Jerry, for convening us. We shouldn't miss the bigger picture here, which is that Russia attacked the United States of America and our democracy in the last election. Donald Trump's team eagerly sought to work with the Russians, from his campaign chairman to his son-in-law to his son. For months, they moved mountains to take meetings and receive the hacked proceeds that the Russians conducted. That is worth investigating, and that's what this is all about. The fastest way to get to a conclusion in this investigation is first for Donald Trump to sit down and answer the questions that have actually already been provided to him. Now, Vice President Pence says that we need to wrap it up. Well, you don't get to work with Russians throughout a campaign and then complain that the special counsel is still counting Russians. You don't get to take that benefit. And finally, when you lie, investigations take longer. So if Donald Trump and his team would just stop lying, and we've already had guilty pleas for false statements, this investigation would move a lot faster. We're not helpless in Donald Trump's efforts to invade upon the rule of law. And so Paul Ryan needs to finally be the check on power that Congress has given to him. Today, there's an opportunity to do that. There's a Gang of Eight meeting, a bipartisan meeting, to look at many of the bogus claims Donald Trump has asserted. But what Paul Ryan is doing represents the worst of Washington. He's going to a fundraiser instead. So the corrupting influence of money wins over core democratic principles. Paul Ryan should stay in town, go to that meeting, finally step up, be a leader, and be a check on an out-of-control president.
Jamie Raskin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nadler. I've just got 3 quick points. The first point is that the President of the United States has one job under Article 2 of the Constitution, is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. This president wakes up every morning trying to figure out how to thwart the laws of the United States. That's all that he's been doing. And at this point, if you think about it, he is defying the very basis of the rule of law. We can't think of another president who has directly interfered in a single case, much less a case that involves him directly. And yet that's what this president is doing. So the second point about it is, if you go back to the Paula Jones versus Clinton case, the argument made on behalf of the executive was he shouldn't be subject to civil process because it would be distracting from his duties. And the court rightfully rejected that. And our Republican colleagues roundly condemned that argument. They said the president should be subject to civil process, to the rule of law while in office. And of course, that's right. And in the case of Donald Trump, far from distracting him, if he does the interview well, he'll be able theoretically to get back to work, whatever that means in his case, because he spends all of his time on this stuff anyway. So why doesn't he go and do an actual interview and spill his guts and tell the truth, which he has an obligation to do as a citizen of the United States as well as a president? And my final point is this. What happens if we allow President Trump and the Republicans to get away with this sabotage of a criminal investigation and prosecution in a case involving the president and his men? Well, what precedent does that set for every other president to come forward? At that point, we're saying that any president can destroy any Department of Justice investigation that he wants. How dangerous would that be? As my colleagues have said, we have no kings here, we have no queens here, we have no titles of nobility, we have no slaves, we have no serfs, just the rule of law, and all of us are equal under it. And yet that most precious principle to our country is now being threatened by the President of the United States himself.
Pramila Jayapal.
Thank you to our ranking member and my excellent colleagues. Since I'm batting cleanup, let me just put it this way. Number one, Donald Trump thinks that the institutions and the departments that are core to our democracy work for him. He is wrong. They work for the American people. Number two, there are critical things that must happen in order for this investigation to continue and to wrap up. Number one, he should be interviewed by Special Counsel Mueller. You've heard my colleagues say that. It's a crucial step for the investigation to be taken to its conclusion. Number two, Mueller must be able to finish that investigation without obstruction, and the results of that investigation need to be conveyed to the American people in a report. And number three, the Judiciary Committee and the American people need these facts so that we can continue to protect our democracy. I think one of the most troubling things to me is that this should not be just the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee that are standing up for our democracy and for our Constitution. This should be a bipartisan effort to protect our Constitution. That is more important than worries about whether Donald Trump is going to bully somebody so that they can win their election. It is more important than anything else that we are given. This is our one duty that we are sent to Congress to conduct, and that is to protect our democracy and protect our Constitution. So I hope at the next press conference we have Republicans who stand up here and say that this investigation must continue and that the president must stop what he is doing to undermine our institutions and these critical departments that function for the American people. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to very quickly summarize what we're saying today. One, the president must not make decisions about individual law enforcement investigations, especially one in which he is a subject of the investigation. Two, he is engaging in a propaganda campaign of disinformation, this whole nonsense about Spygate. And let me mention the obvious elephant in the room. He's trying to say that there was a plot by the FBI and the Department of Justice to rig the election against him. Obviously, it's the other, if there's any plot, it was the other way around. I'm not saying there was a plot, but the fact is, the fact that Hillary Clinton was under investigation was publicized by the FBI and could not help her in the election. The fact that Trump was under investigation, his campaign, was kept very secret. If they were trying to rig an election against Trump, that would have been very open. Third, a deliberate decision to expose the identity of a confidential source is reckless, was made, and we will demand an investigation of who is responsible for that. And finally, the president should agree to an interview, and that we expect that he will, or that there will be an interview in any event, and that the special counsel will make a report and submit that report to the public. Thank you very much. We have time for brief questions. Yes. No, I do not. I do not think it is appropriate for there to be that classified briefing at all. Classified information about an ongoing criminal investigation should not be given, period. This is a capitulation to the pressure by the president. Yes.
It turns out that Paul Ryan is going to the noon. What is his role in that, you think should be?
Well, as I said, I don't think there should be any meeting with anybody. But it's better that there be a Gang of Eight meeting than just with a couple of Republicans on one side. And his role as Speaker of the House, if he's going to a briefing, is to listen. and then to keep whatever he hears totally quiet. We must not have information about an ongoing criminal investigation leaked to the press, which might either sabotage the investigation or prejudice the rights of various witnesses or suspects. Yeah,
Billy, quickly on that one. Paul Ryan's going to the partisan meeting. He's not going to the bipartisan meeting. And we've not had an effort to directly confront Paul Ryan on a lot of the alarming behavior by Chairman Nunes. And going to the bipartisan meeting, the Gang of Eight meeting, would be an opportunity to do that. Instead, he's going out of town to Houston for a fundraiser. He should stay in town so we can address these issues.
yes.
You say you're asking DOJ for an investigation into the revelation of this classified.
We will later today, yeah.
In a statement earlier this week, you noted that even members of Congress would be subject to potential prosecution if they were involved. Do you have
Indeed.
any evidence that members of Congress are doing this, and do you have concerns that
members
of Congress have been back-channeling to the White House throughout this?
I have a lot of concerns about that, but I'm not going to make any accusations for which I don't have definitive evidence, unlike some other people. Certainly, members of Congress are not immune from investigation if there is evidence that they've been involved in giving out classified information or outing a source. If they have, they ought to be prosecuted, as anybody else would be. Thank you very much.